The Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi, in other news, condemning the scuffles that erupted last night between members of the EFF and crime wardens, that's Gauteng crime prevention wardens, during his State of the Province address. Chaos erupting as opposition parties objected to the heavy presence of the crime wardens in the provincial legislature. Opposition parties have accused Lesufi of creating an intimidating atmosphere in the legislature. He says they're playing politics.
I must start by condemning the behavior of certain political parties in the House. We can't tolerate people who, when you've got guests in the House, they feel that they can undermine those guests. I know when I was the MEC for Education, the political parties will say to former Premier Makura, you are speaking about SEPA 1 million. Where are these 1 million young people? And today when we bring them, the same parties want to eject them from the meeting. So it's so unfortunate, but we just have to tolerate it for political tolerance sake.
Juniour Khumalo had a front row seat at the State of the Province address last night, and he was there at the briefing by the Gauteng Premier today. Joins us now. Juniour, good afternoon. So we have these scuffles between the EFF and the crime wardens. The crime wardens we know are backed fully. It's Panyaza Lesufi's idea. Isn't he the main reason that the ANC and the EFF are in coalition in Joburg and Ekurhuleni in Gauteng?
Indeed, he's actually the main reason why the EFF and the ANC are actually in coalition. He has been in support of that coalition with the EFF instead of a coalition with the DA. We know that is also caused a bit of friction, especially with the ANC veterans who do not want that coalition to continue, especially because of what's happening in Ekurhuleni and some of the other metros that the two parties are in coalition together. But the EFF was actually complaining at the provincial legislature about the presence of Panya, as they are affectionately known, because they're saying that they were there to support the Premier and basically clap hands for him as he delivered the State of the Province address. The DA, on the other hand, were actually complaining about the presence of armed security within the House, saying that should not be the case. And this has also played out in the National Assembly as well, where we saw the DA complain about armed security in the House.
Okay, so this is what happened last night. Once the speech started going, another promise, I think it's the third or fourth by my count, to end e-tolls in Gauteng.
Indeed. Initially, the promise to end e-tolls was delivered by the former Premier before Panyaza Lesufi took over. Last year, Panyaza Lesufi as well made the same promise. But this time around, when we went to the briefing and at the Gauteng Legislature, he spoke about the reasons why it has taken so long to actually get to a point where the e-tolls are scrapped. He said that there was talks between himself and the National Treasury as well as the Minister of Transport. And there was a disagreement in terms of who is going to pay the lion's share of that debt that is owed to Sanral. So eventually National Treasury decided to pay 70% of that amount, while the Gauteng Gov was expected to pay about 30%. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about that.
We, as Gauteng, felt that the issue of e-tolls has prolonged for too long. And then we voluntarily made an offer to the National Minister. We can pay back so that we remove this. Initially, Minister said we pay 60%. We refused to say we can't pay 60%. He persuaded us for 50%. We also refused until we settled for 30%. To say we will pay 30% as Gauteng government, and then you pay 70%. Then we have don't have a problem with borrowers. So we debated for quite some time until we reached an agreement of 30 and 70. And that's when we made an announcement, because we have reached an agreement at that time. But we then differed on how that 30% should be paid. And that's almost 12 billion. So Treasury said that we are taking 30% in our next financial year. I mean, if you take 12 billion from our budget, health will suffer, education will suffer. So that level of debate took long, and we could not then start the process of removing the e-toll.
It's a fascinating political debate, this. Okay, I understand what he says about the numbers. But if I was living in Gauteng, I do live in Gauteng, I would say, why should people in Gauteng pay for the e-tolls? We didn't want them. They were forced upon the people of Gauteng by national government. If I lived in Inanda, in KwaZulu-Natal, I would say, why should I pay for e-tolls? There's nothing to do with me. I get nothing from the Gauteng highways.
Indeed, Panyaza actually spoke about that, saying the problem with that is that some of these roads that the Gauteng government actually had to pay for are actually used by a lot of other citizens, not just the Gauteng citizens. So that's where the debate took long in terms of them reaching an agreement in terms of who is going to pay. But in terms of today's briefing, the main reason why he called this briefing was to just speak about how he is going to finance some of the commitments that were made yesterday during his State of the Province address. Because we know that a lot of political parties said some of these commitments were pie-in-the-sky wishes that are not going to come to fruition because it was just pure electioneering. He said that he has actually secured about billions of rands from the Workers' Investment Fund that he will use actually to buy the hospitals. He promised to buy about 12 hospitals and convert them from being private to public. So that money is going to go towards that, as well as transport, as well as housing as well. He also spoke about how during the last financial year, the province itself was able to get about 32 billion from its revenue collection as well. So the money is there, according to him, and that's what is going to finance all of the commitments that he delivered yesterday.
It is an election year. I mean, can we see maybe that he's under a little bit of pressure here? And it's a difficult position for him.
Indeed, he's under a lot of pressure. But when you look at the surveys, they're saying that Panyaza is actually more popular than the ANC president himself because of the jobs that he has been creating, because of the promises that he has been making. Some of these promises he hasn't fulfilled them. He says he's still in the process of actually fulfilling them. So it bodes well for the ANC, especially in Gauteng, because they were on a serious electoral decline. So his presence there as the leader and the chairperson of the ANC in Gauteng is actually doing wonders for the ANC.
Juniour Khumalo, thanks very much indeed. Political reporter. He was there today, there last night as well.